What an unbelievable week one of college football. There were so many amazing things that happened, and there's no chance I can cover it all in one video, but today we're going to talk about 5 winners and 5 losers from week 1 of college football. There's probably going to be a part 2 and part 3 to this series this week, as I'm working on probably 20 videos right now. Please let me know down below a winner or loser I can put in the next part, and let me know your thoughts on week 1 and whatever you want me to cover on this channel down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you're new, leave a like if you want to support my work, and turn on notifications so you never miss when we upload here. Now let's talk about some winners and losers from week 1. We're first going to start with our first winner of week 1, and that was the Florida Gators. Right now, they're the one team that is pretty much guaranteed to jump into the top 25, and Billy Napier had about as perfect of a coaching debut as possible. His first game was against the number 7 Utah Utes, who were a dark horse playoff contender and were very experienced. That honestly didn't really look to be the case on Saturday, as Florida was in this game the entire time. Anthony Richardson combined for 3 touchdowns, including a game-winning score late in the 4th. Florida's defense played great, and they ran the ball very well. Montreal Johnson and Trevor Etienne both looked great, and the passing game was good enough. More importantly, the swamp was full, they hung in the game the entire time, and when they desperately needed a big play, they picked it off with just a couple seconds to go to beat the number 7 team in the country. Welcome to the top 25 Gators, and now the Florida and AR-15 hype is going to get unreal. Our first loser of the video is going to be the LSU Tigers. Obviously, they lost 24-23 last night, and this game exposed a lot of flaws in the Tigers team and has some fans worried about the trajectory of the program. If we're being honest here, there are a lot of people around the country who are rooting against LSU because they do not like Brian Kelly. Say what you want about the guy, he is a pretty decent football coach, but on Sunday night, there were some mistakes. The running game was pretty much non-existent outside of Jaden Daniels. Malik Neighbors had 2 costly muff punts, and there was definitely some questionable coaching decisions throughout the entire game. Florida State pretty much controlled the game all the way, but after their late fumble, they gave LSU a chance to win, and they drove down the field and scored a late touchdown, which looked like it was going to send the game to overtime. Unfortunately, for the second time that night, they blocked the game-winning extra point attempt, and Florida State won 24-23. Honestly, the best thing I could say from that game is that Jaden Daniels did not look that bad, and Jere Jenkins is going to be a pretty good player this year. Kayshon Boutte was pretty much non-existent, and apparently he's been throwing a temper tantrum on social media, so I'm curious to see what's going to happen to him. But right now, I don't have a whole lot of faith in LSU, and as I said in the offseason, I was not very high on the Tigers, and let's see what's going to happen here. Our next winner is the Indiana Hoosiers. After being preseason ranked for the first time in decades last year, the Hoosiers ended up going 2-10 with an 0-8 mark in conference play. They lost all the hype they had gained from the 2020 season, Tom Allen was on the hot seat, and everyone went back to laughing at the Hoosiers program. The expectations were obviously not very high for them this year, as they were picked to finish 7th in the East. On Friday night, the Hoosiers played like a completely different team. New transfer quarterback Connor Bazelak had one of his best games of his career, as he threw for 330 yards with a touchdown, and he eventually led a game-winning drive. The running game was pretty much non-existent, but 2 of the receivers played like stars. Both Cam Camper and DJ Matthews had over 100 yards receiving, and the defense played like they did back in 2020. They made a ton of big plays, forced a ton of turnovers, and kept the team in the game. While the Hoosiers offense was dead in the water for most of the night, they had a game-winning drive punctuated by a Sean Shivers touchdown, and Indiana won 23-20, as they start out 1-0 both overall and in the conference, and this was a huge momentum game for them, and if they lost it, the season would have been toast. I'm not saying Indiana is a breakout team to watch, but the difference between winning and losing that game is huge for a program like them. Our next major loser is the Oregon Ducks. I don't even know where to begin with how bad they played this past weekend. Over the offseason, I was talking about how Oregon football was overrated, but no one seemed to listen to that. In Dan Lanning's first head coaching game against his former school, the Ducks got obliterated. Bo Nix looked terrible and looked like his old self, as he didn't throw a touchdown and had 2 interceptions and could never get the offense going. The running game was pretty much non-existent as well, and the passing game could not get going either. Georgia scored on their first 7 drives, and the defense was just getting manhandled. Georgia had the better quarterback, better running backs, better receivers, better defense, and had better offense and defensive line. They also had the better coaching staff, the better fans, and they beat Oregon in every single category. The Dogs ended up winning 49-3, and Dan Lanning has a lot to figure out. Does he keep Bo Nix at quarterback? What does he do about this defense? And how many games are the Ducks even going to win? That's a question I cannot answer, but right now, I would not be feeling good if I was an Oregon fan. Our next winner is Drake May. If you follow college football recruiting, then you are very familiar with Drake May. Back in the class of 2021, May was a 5-star recruit who actually originally committed to Alabama. He would later flip to go back home to play for North Carolina though, and he would be the backup to Sam Howell last year. There's obviously a lot of hype for him going into 2022, but I don't think anyone expected that he'd lead the country in both passing yards and passing touchdowns, and that is exactly what has happened so far. Through his first 2 games, he's thrown for 646 yards with 9 touchdowns, and he leads the country in both of those categories. He was a winner on Saturday, as despite North Carolina's defense not showing up, he managed to pass for 352 yards with 4 touchdowns. He led them to an all-time thrilling victory over Appalachian State, and right now he is a dark horse Heisman contender and is playing his way into becoming one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football right now. Our next loser is obviously Utah. After a late season surge and a great Rose Bowl game, Utah was considered a playoff contender and the favorite to win the Pac-12 in 2022. Fortunately, they'd have a very difficult Week 1 game as they'd have to go on the road to the Swamp. While Cam Rising and his team played pretty well, it was not good enough to win, as they could never seemingly take full control of the game. They couldn't figure out an answer to stop AR-15 on the ground, and at the end of the day, their star experienced quarterback Cam Rising made a mistake and threw a game-stealing interception and made them lose the game. Now all of a sudden, 2 of the top 3 big brands in the Pac-12 have lost, and if you're Coach Whittingham, you have to figure out how to motivate this team after starting out 0-1. I really like this Utah team, but they're one of the biggest losers of Week 1. Call me crazy, but Duke football is a huge winner in Week 1. After their best coach in school history, David Cutcliffe, decided to call it a career, the Blue Devils were pegged as the worst team in the ACC, and no one thought anything of this year's team. Their new head coach, Mike Elko, came from Texas A&M, and they'd have to find a new starting quarterback, running back, and receivers. How did the Blue Devils do in their first game? Well, they showed out. They shut out Temple 30-0, and their quarterback, Riley Leonard, looked great. The defense was spectacular, and after watching highlights, it seems like Duke's defense was great, and they have some young talented players at both the running back and wide receiver spot. The narrative around Duke football is that they're the worst team in the conference, but right now, Mike Elko's program is off to a great start in 2022. Our next set of losers is the 4 small schools that almost pulled off an upset. East Carolina hosted the number 13 ranked NC State Wolfpack, and after a great goal line stand, they looked like they were going to tie the game. Unfortunately, they missed an extra point and then missed a game-winning field goal, and they lost out on their opportunity to have one of the biggest home wins in school history. The same thing happened for App State. They went toe-to-toe with North Carolina for a while, but after falling apart, they found themselves back in the game, but when they decided to go for 2, Chase Bryce ended up overthrowing his receiver. They got bailed out as North Carolina decided to return the onside kick for a touchdown, and after they scored, they went for 2 again, and Chase Bryce couldn't get it. App State missed out on a huge opportunity for a home victory as well. The South Dakota State-Iowa game was one of the more shocking of Week 1, as the Jackrabbits held their own against Iowa for the entire game. Besides the 2 safeties that Iowa had, the Hawkeyes could not score, and they were dead in the water. Unfortunately, South Dakota State could not make enough plays on offense, and they ended up losing the game. This would have been one of the biggest wins in school history for them. After that, you have UTSA. They hosted the number 24 Cougars, and they had an opportunity to win one of their biggest games in program history as well. After leading by 2 touchdowns, Clayton Tune led Houston back, and after going to overtime, UTSA could not finish it off, and they lost. Finally, you have to talk about Idaho. Idaho got relegated from the FBS to the FCS, but they put up a fight against Washington State. Cougars have a lot of hype led by Cam Ward at quarterback, but they were in the game the entire time, and after pulling within 1 touchdown, they just couldn't get the job done, and that could have been a program-changing victory for the Vandals. Those 5 teams, unfortunately, are losers, despite having great Week 1 performances. The final winner we're going to talk about in today's video is Henry Parrish Jr. He was pretty highly recruited coming out of high school as a running back, but he decided to go to Ole Miss. For the last 2 years, he has been a backup, and instead of giving him more of a role in 2022, the Rebels decided to bring in 2 transfer running backs and basically told Parrish to get the heck out of there. That is exactly what he did, and thankfully Miami would give him an opportunity to come in and play. After working his way up the depth chart, Parrish had an incredible Week 1 performance as he ran the ball 14 times for 108 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had one of the best performances of any running back in Week 1, and this guy is an absolute winner because he was told he wasn't good enough to play at Ole Miss and instead has gone over to another big-time program and has proven himself and now could become one of the best running backs in the country. Good for him. The final loser we're going to cover in today's video is the Louisville Cardinals. My goodness, this was a bad Week 1 performance for them. Louisville had a lot of hype to them. They're considered the biggest dark horse in the ACC, and I read non-stop articles about how this was Satterfield's breakout year and how Michael Cunningham was finally going to prove himself as a superstar this year. Unfortunately, that's not the case, as Syracuse said, "We're going to take you to the woodshed." In what was one of the worst losses of the Satterfield era, Cunningham didn't throw for a single touchdown and had 2 interceptions, and he was limited to just over 2 yards per carry on the ground. The defense could not stop Syracuse's rushing offense, as Garrett Schrader ran for 100 yards and Sean Tucker also ran for 100 yards. The Louisville offense couldn't move, they couldn't stop Syracuse, and all of a sudden, Scott Satterfield might have the hottest seat of any coach in the ACC right now. For a team that had a lot of hype and a lot of experience, they were pretty terrible, and good for Syracuse, but this is tough for Louisville, and they're going to have to bounce back quick, or they're going to get left behind. So yeah, today we talked about 5 winners and 5 losers from week 1, and I have a part 2 video coming up, and if those 2 both do well, I'll do a part 3. We have a couple more topics to talk about in the next video, and be sure to let me know a winner and loser I can talk about next. Give me your thoughts on week 1, and let me know what topic, player, or subject I could take a look at in my next video. Before you go, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.